So welcome everybody. I am Lea Gilmore. I am part of Govans Presbyterian Church. That's where you are. You're in the Govan space. And I am one of the music directors and also the Minister for Racial Justice and Multicultural Engagement. Oh my God, I know it's a long title, but we do good things. And I'm here with the wonderful, fantastic, thrilling Maria Wong, who is a member of our racial justice ministry. Not just a member, she's one of our leaders. So, Maria, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm not that wonderful. I'm just friends with Lea. My name is Maria, and I am a member of Govans Presbyterian Church. I also work for the nonprofit arts organization Common Ground on the Hill, which is underwriting support for Govans Music Monday performers. We're recording tonight's program as part of our work as a Maryland Folklife Center of the Maryland State Arts Council. The video will be archived on the Common Ground on the Hill official YouTube channel, where you can find other Govans Music Monday programs and many other videos. While you're on YouTube, also check out the Govans Presbyterian Church YouTube channel, which includes recordings of sermons and the Govans Racial Justice Speaker Series. There is a lot of great stuff, so I hope you'll take a look. Thank you, Lea.
Well, thank you, Maria. And I'm telling you, Maria has been priceless as we've done all these programs every single week. She's just a joy. So I get the opportunity to introduce our guest to you. Her name is Tona Brown. Tona, yes, clap for yourself, yes. And the reason why I am hesitating is because I'm trying to fix my screen, brothers and sisters. All right, so I'm going to introduce Tona and then we're going to go on with it. I am thrilled to introduce Tona. She's one of the most talented young women that I've met here during when she had her time here in Baltimore, and I was doing a lot of work with Equality Maryland. I get a chance to really spend some time with Tona, and I really enjoyed just her presence, just her spirit. But she's a vocalist, a violinist, an entrepreneur, and a teacher, and she's also an author, and we're going to talk about that. Tona Brown has an international performance career throughout the United States and Canada and Europe as a violinist and mezzo-soprano. Ms. Brown is also an advocate for transgender issues in the arts, often speaking and performing at colleges and universities. She is the first transgender woman of color to perform the national anthem for a sitting president at the LGBT Leadership Gala for former President Barack Obama. That's a big deal, Tona. At the Sheraton in New York City. She is also the first transgender woman to headline at Carnegie Hall and a program of African American composers with an all-inclusive LGBT cast of performers. Amazing. Miss Brown graduated from the Governor's School for the Arts, a prestigious high school for gifted and talented students. She was formally educated at the Shenandoah University, which is a big deal, and Conservatory of Music, studying violin performance with minors in viola, piano, and voice. For Shenandoah University's 2021 production of Suor Angelica, she recorded an opera movie playing the role of La Zia Principessa. Sorry for my Italian folks. Miss Brown performed. I'm not finished now. She's a star. Miss Brown performed a lead transgender role as Hannah in the opera As One by Laura Kaminsky, which the Lowell Chamber Orchestra under the direction of Orlando Cella in the fall of 2021. Miss Brown also asked to do a master class on has also been asked to do a master class on transgender voices by the Virginia Association of Teachers. Tona Brown is a judge for the 2023 Ben Holt Memorial Strings Competition at the National Association of Negro Musicians. I haven't heard that word in a long time. Tona teaches virtual private lessons to students and around the world with her company. Welcome, 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 Tona. We're so glad you're here. I am proud to introduce to you Ms. Tona Brown.
Oh, that's so neat. I can hear the little claps. Thank you so, so much. I want to tell you, it's such a pleasure to be here. I just had a crazy day, like just teaching and, doing what I love to do, which is teaching and encouraging young people and everyone to pursue their dreams in music. And hopefully I will encourage some of you as well. What I want to come here today to talk about is that I worked very hard with Christopher King, a journalist, and he and I, over a 5-year period, put together a memoir. And when I tell you it is a tell-all memoir, and it was so much fun, but it was very cathartic. I don't think we ever realized how much we go through and how we carry so much weight on us all the time. And it was just an amazing experience. I met Mr. King years ago, similar to when I met Lea, just a young artist, and I was on the Training Roadshow. And of course, that name is so taboo and weird now, but at the time, the show was called the Training Roadshow, and we went from Florida all the way through Canada in a bus. Well, a bus sounds too glamorous for what it was. It was like a little van, like a little caravan that they rented. And we had little homestays, and we would perform in bookstores, all the way through mainstream halls. And it was so much fun. I mean, we did probably about 40 different colleges. So it was like every day we would go to 1 to 3 places every day. And I told myself at that point, that was in 2005, I was 25. I said, you know what? If I can stay in decent voice, or if I played violin as well. If I can do this, then being a performer is for me. I didn't know those guys. It was more men than it was trans women on the show. And so it was a big risk. And on the way to St. Louis, I met Christopher King. And from that day forward, similar to when I met Lea, that energy was so amazing. And he was so supportive and saying, you need to be doing bigger things. And I said, hey, I'm just trying to get out of school and do this. And he told me instantaneously that I should have a book. And I said, I no one's gonna want to read about me. I'm only 25 years old. I haven't had enough life experience. Isn't that funny how we have these thoughts, and I said, I don't really have enough life experience for that. I want to live a little more and see what life is about. And he said, okay. He said, I can see where you're coming from. And so I said, why don't we do this? If we can do an interview style, then I will do it. Because I knew I didn't have time to sit there and be, redoing and redrafting and doing all that kind of stuff. So he agreed to it phenomenally enough. He said, I just think that this is important. And so we started doing these interviews while I was on the road, while I would be in between classes, similar to this. Online, in person. Him and his family would come to town. We would go to like some spot in a atrium of the hotel that he's staying at or I'm staying at. And so we came up with this memoir. And then I ended up talking to one of my good friends from college. And she and I went to high school together. And she said that she needed to get some publishing going because she wanted to be a dean of a music school up in Hartwood College. And I said, hey, could you help us to organize this book? Because, you got to think about it, it's hours of conversations. And so she said, I would love to. Like, you would do that for me? I'm like, sure. Could you do this to help me? And that's how we came to it. And it has been such a joy to get the reviews from around the world and talk to so many people. As a transgender person of color in particular, which is going into this conversation, there are so many systemic things that keep us from doing just something like this. As you can imagine, a lot of us suffer from a lot of trauma in our lives. And I wanted to figure out a way to explain what we go through my life story, and to explain to people what our relationships are like. What is it like to be the grandparent of someone who is transgender, right? What is it like to be the mother of someone who's transgender? And I just so happen to have the most wonderful mom in the world. She was so supportive. She didn't understand everything. And that's what I want people to know. You don't have to be perfect to be wonderful, okay? She didn't understand everything that I was going through, but she had this massive amount of empathy. She has since passed, but she had this massive amount of empathy because from the age of 3, she knew that I was different. And when she tells the story, I'm actually amazed. I'm from Norfolk, Virginia. My family lives from Norfolk all the way down through Louisiana and then all throughout the South. And then we have spotted people who moved all over the country, you know, New York and different places. So we're in the heart of the Bible Belt. And my mother, who ended up going through the foster care system and having a lot of life challenges, as you can imagine, was a youth evangelist. So you can imagine, we're talking about the Church of God in Christ, Pentecostal, all of that. And so they were very homo and transphobic. I mean, extremely. And my mother decided to leave the church for her own reasons long before I was born. But she had decided to leave the church because she didn't like how negative they were to people who were different. And then here I've become born. And from day one, when I was born, it was actually a scandal because of my skin complexion. My family, a lot of the people have darker complexions. It was a scandal when I was born. I was born in a blizzard, of the big blizzard of 1980. I was December 30th, 1979. And so everything was shut down and, you know, all this craziness. And then I pop out and my eyes were slanted. I looked kind of Chinese. And so people could not relate to like, what was your mama doing? You know, that kind of thing. And it comes to find out I look just like my grandfather and his side of the family. And we're Native American and Black and a mixture. And so it was a scandal from day one. And so I wanted to be really honest about that in the book as well, that from day one, my existence was an issue to everyone around me, unbeknownst to me. So here I am trying to live my life and grow, and I'm a very spiritual person, not a religious person, but I'm a very spiritual person. I've always felt in tune with a higher power. And I've always known my life mission ever since I was young, and that was to educate others and to get people to understand that what you see sometimes is not congruent to who we really are. And so I've always known that I was different. My mother knew I was different. And she tells a story that I mentioned in the book as well, where she was throwing me up and down. I was a toddler. And this woman came over and started rushing over to her and said, "Oh my God, you're going to kill that girl." You know, and and my mother was looking at her like she had lost her mind. And we were at the doctor's office. And then she went into the doctor's office and the doctor said, "Oh my goodness, you have the prettiest little girl." And my mother was like, "I had a boy." And she said, from that point on, there was always an issue with my gender, with how feminine I was, with how I looked, how long my hair was, you know, the texture. It was always something, and it used to give her issues. Now, my mother never told me this until I was much older. She never told me the struggles that she went through. And some of the things that she has graciously said to the press was that when you have a transgender child, a lot of times you have to mourn the life that you thought your child was going to have. And I thought that was so profound. And I remember just being in tears, like, What? Because my mom always tried to uplift me. She wanted me to have a good self-esteem. My aunties and all of them took me in. There were people in the family that, of course, just felt that I need to be roughed up and toughed up. And so I would do things. I would go to, I wanted to appease my father, who died when I was about 8.5, 9, from lung cancer. And he was in the military and all those things. And only thing I wanted to do, I was one of those kids that always tried to do everything right, always tried to not ruffle the feathers, so to speak. And my mother knew it, you know. All she had to do, she never had to spank me. She would give me that look. That was it. Would snatch me by the edges, as we say. And that's all she had to do. But my brothers, I have all brothers and one half sister that I just got to know in the past 5, 6 years. They were tough, and they are truck drivers now, and they love me in their own way. And they've been very accepting, except for one of them in particular. So I have a privilege, quote unquote, that a lot of transgender people do not have. And that is simply that I have a family who, they weren't all perfect, but they tried their best to understand. They allowed me to grow and to develop. And I was the one who took a longer time to actually, what you all would consider transition, you know, in the form of taking hormone therapy, and all those things. Just because, again, I didn't want to disappoint them. And I remember I was talking to my mother one day, and a woman that you all knew in Baltimore, Leah, you know, her name was Sydney Kimbrough. And Sydney and I became friends from Yahoo Instant Messenger and blackplanet.com. These are websites that are old and, you know, all that. And Sydney came to sit with me and my mother. And I remember when my mom saw her and we all sat and started talking, I think Sydney thought that it might be some kind of drama or something. And I was 22 at the time. I just got out of college and I looked very much like I look now. But I didn't wear makeup and stuff like that. But I was starting to have problems going to the restrooms. My mother would be with me and she was worried sick. And I remember her always being so worried about me, but you know, she would try to play it off. But one time I went to a Kmart restroom, and there was a gentleman that came in there, and it was the boys' restroom. And I walked in, and this man saw me come in and he peed all over the wall. And he was like, "Oh, you came into the wrong restroom, and this is that." And I was like, whatever, you know, I looked at him and I switched on past, you know, like, you know, I was always that way. I've always been very strong-willed, you know, it is what it is, you know, type of person. But my mother was outside the door. And I remember telling her what then happened. And I share this in the book as well. So I go into the bathroom stall because I never liked urinals. I hated PE because I knew I was in the wrong locker room. I never felt comfortable in those spaces ever. Ever since I've never liked them. And the man, as I was going into the stall, when I went to leave, he starts to come in the stall, but he's exposed. And I'm like, whoa. Now, again, I'm so young. I'm not realizing that this man has done this on purpose. He's pretending like it was an accident. Do you understand what I'm saying? And so I'm like, my mother is, I was like, I'm like, you know, I'm like, what is happening? And so I'm like, I go past him to go wash my hands, and he comes back out of the stall and pushes me up against the wall and starts kissing me, and he's exposed and he's all over me in there. And I remember my mother had always taught me that whenever you're in some kind of traumatic experience, to stop, take a deep breath, look for your exits, figure out if you have anything to protect yourself. And I realized I didn't have any of those things. So I went like this. And I often do that when I'm in those situations, because unfortunately, this wasn't the first time. It's happened my entire life, ever since I was maybe 8 to 10. I've always had this sort of aggressive behavior with men. And but I remember just thinking, oh my goodness, my mom is outside, you know. And he goes, oh, is that your sister outside? Because we look so much alike. And I said, if I scream, my mother is gonna come in here, you know. And I pushed him and I said, you need to calm down and snap out of it. And he kind of did. He was like, you know. And as I calmed him down, he ended up telling me that he was a nurse and that he did not mean to be offensive. He was so shocked that I had come into the restroom, and yada 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 excuse. And I told him that I need to leave because my mother was standing out there, and I left. And similar things would happen to me like this my entire life. There were certain things that my mother didn't know about until she, maybe about 5 years before she died, that I actually told her continued to happen throughout my entire life. So they happen so frequently that I actually thought that that was part of a woman's experience. Most of the time when I talk to my cisgender girlfriends, they tell me that they've never gone through anything like that. But that has been my existence. And so one of the things that I want to share with people is that oftentimes if you hear the transpanic defense that they give and this whole notion that we're trying to deceive the men, and that is it's totally false. These men know exactly who they are, who we are, and they want what they want, and half of the time they're married. I would say 99% of the time these are married men who know exactly what they want, and they like trans women, and it just is what it is. And so we have to change that narrative. And as a Black trans woman who happens to be someone that has some privileges where I'm not in the trenches like a lot of the girls. And what I mean by that is I'm not homeless. I didn't have a family that put me out on the streets. I never had to do survival sex work or anything. The only time that I would have been depressed was before I transitioned. I couldn't figure out myself as a teenager, that kind of thing. And I've always known that I wanted to perform. Ever since I was a kid, the only thing that would make me happy was performing. We went through a lot of homelessness and moving a lot with my family. So we would stay in hotels, and my stepfather was horrible with money. And even though he worked for UPS, every year we moved. And my mother would be so frustrated and everything. Why she didn't leave him, that's a whole nother story. But what would happen is that we would constantly be moving around all the time. So I never really got to feel like I was in one place ever. I think the longest we ever stayed anywhere might have been 3 or 4 years or something like that. So by the time I meet someone as beautiful as Lea, and I'm performing and doing all these things, what people didn't know behind the scenes was the poverty and having to choose that I wanted this career so bad that I was willing to leave my family that I was very comfortable with, and having an aunt that owns a huge nonprofit organization in North Carolina who wanted me to work for her. I wanted to make my own career. And as a classical musician from a family that's not really privy to classical music, I knew I had to struggle for a while. And so when I met Lea and people, when I was living in Baltimore, it was a hard time for me because I'm in a new place. I don't know anyone. And one of the times that I remember seeing Lea and other people, I performed at an event where Sheila Dixon was there. And it was Anthony McCarthy's award show. Were you there, Lea? I can't remember if you were actually in attendance. Were you in attendance?
Yes, I won an award.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. That's
Yes.
right. So that was one of the times that oftentimes people would see me, but I didn't really have a place to go. You know, I had friends that I was staying with. It was the first time I had seen other Black trans women that, you know, with so many beautiful, amazing people. Because when you're in the South, you don't really see us like out in public like that, you know, a lot of times. And so I went through a period of going to clubs just to find people that look like me. And during that period, which you guys will read about as well, I ended up meeting someone who killed someone right before I met them. And that was what got me out of the club scene, because it could have been me. Who knows? I don't think so. The man really liked me. He was just trying to get out of the state, but you never know, you know. And so there is a story in the book where I tell everyone how I got out of being a club girl. And that was because I met this man and we were at a party. And someone said, hey, this guy has been coming to this bar asking about you. It was one of my favorite little bars that I used to go to. And I said, oh, cool. Like, what's his name? His name is Ernest. So I used to try to learn how to play pool. And my girlfriends would try to teach me how to play pool. Some of the guys in the club would try to teach me how to play pool. I didn't like to drink, so I used to always have a sweet tea or a Sprite. Every now and then I might have like something, you know, in the club scene, everyone is always drunk and high. But that wasn't really my thing either, because I was still performing. I had come back from Europe. I was doing things with the Governor's School for the Arts. So I always had my tunnel vision. But you guys have to remember, people that look like me don't do what I do. So I still had this longing to be around other people that look like me, talk like me, you know, dress like me even, you know? And so I met this young man and he was so nice. And we went from the club to another after party. And I was sitting on his lap, playing cards, sitting on this man's lap. And he tells his mother that he has to get out of town. And that he had gotten into an altercation with someone. And that he had met this wonderful woman, and her name is Tona, and this. And so I don't even know what is really going on. And I guess he's talking in code with his mom, but I could overhear her. And she said to him, you need to turn yourself in. So I'm thinking this must have been a really bad fight. And so my spidey sense was like, I don't trust this person. You know what I mean? He seems nice, but something is going on. You guys, I left from there. And the next morning, he was looking all around, looking out the windows and all that kind of carrying on. And I get a phone call from, I turned my phone off. I get a phone call from all my friends and they're like, where are you right now? His face is on the news. I'm like, what are y'all talking about? His face is on the news. He just they think that he's killed someone. So I think about it, and I was there with one of my friends, and he was a naive young person, and Ernest is asking, what are we talking about? And now I am like, okay, now I'm in survival mode. And again, I had a bad mom. My mom was a beast. She had always taught me, take a deep breath, think first. And so I said, I'm hungry. And he said, yeah, I'm gonna make you some pancakes and some eggs and all of this kind of current on. And I said, okay, cool. I said, well, let's go to the Walmart and go get, this food or whatever. And so he said, yeah, this. And so he turns over to my friend that was with me and he says, what do you want to eat? And the boy says, "Oh no, I'm not hungry." I took my elbow and hit this man, hit him and said, "You better tell him that you're hungry because I don't want to die," because he thinks that something, that we know what is happening. And so of course we're both kind of shaken up a little bit, like trying to figure out what to do. We go to the Walmart and I let him go in. I said, "Oh, I'm just gonna sit in the car." We sit in the car. Sit in the car. He goes into the Walmart. I tell my friend to go all the way to the other side of Walmart so that we could talk on the phone with these people that are blowing up my phone. Apparently, the police had come to the bar. I'm the last person that was seen leaving with him and whatnot. And thankfully, nothing happened. Thankfully, nothing happened and everything ended up being okay. So there's a lot of, I will give some trigger warnings. There's a lot of things that are in the book that speak about the violence and things that come to transgender women. There's survey information that's in there. There's definitions of various things that are in the book so that you're not kind of lost in terminology. And women, gender studies and sexuality studies programs around the country are actually making it a required read for college students so that we can teach people more about what our lives are like. So if anyone has any questions for me, I would love to open it up to everyone here. Please ask anything. I'm an open book.
Well, I do, Tona. You
Sure.
first of all, I mean, your life is just an absolute fascinating adventure, really. I remember you just as such a young woman, and I've always thought so highly of all the gifts that you've given. But
Thank you.
a couple questions. Was music for you a sense of was it a place you went to escape, or did it give you a foundation of some type? What was music for you as you grew? And
Absolutely.
also, I'm sorry, I'm going to ask the other thing too. The narrative is quite different. That you are as you intimated, a classical artist. You do not see that much when we hear about transgender experiences. So tell me what that has been like, also.
Absolutely. Thank you. Wonderful questions. First, absolutely. If it wasn't for music, I probably would have been like many other trans people, especially in my teenage years. I might have tried to commit suicide or something, harm myself, simply because when you're trying to figure out why you're not happy with what you see, why you're depressed or why you're just being yourself and everyone around you is telling you something is wrong. That's why I would like my story to be made into a movie one day, simply because people bring their own stuff to you. When you're a child, you're just doing yourself. So if you decide to play with Barbie dolls, or if you think about your first day of kindergarten, you walk in, they divide everybody up, tell the little boys to go over here, the little girls go over here. Your toys are either pink or blue, all of these type of things. But if it's not really congruent with who you are, which is not the norm for everyone, but for some of us, then it just makes you feel like something is wrong with you. And so you're trying to fit in. You see what I'm saying? Music was one of the few things, music and dance and the arts. That was where I could just be myself. No one cared what I looked like. No one cared about how I was supposed to act. I'm either playing a role or I am playing this piece, right? It didn't matter, even though in dance, I wanted to go into ballet. My dream was to go to the Royal Ballet, and all of those things, because I used to take ballet, tap, and jazz. And, I'm a perfectionist in anything I do. So I wanted to go to the top. And so it was Alvin Ailey. I wanted to be in American Ballet Theater. And then the goal was to go to the Royal Ballet. But I was too hippie, jiggling around, like my body you just wasn't fitting what I knew that they wanted. And I always had issues with my weight. And so I was like, this is not going to work. But when I got into music, I could escape whatever was going on. And the question is amazing, and it makes me emotional, because when we were homeless, I would go into the bathroom of the hotels and just play with all these Four Seasons. And how I was introduced to music was listening to it and going to arts programs in the public school system. And in the 5th grade, we went to go see Peter and the Wolf. And I remember in the 4th grade, we went so that we could sign up for the 5th grade program. And the teacher sent us to the what is it here in DC, Washington Performing Arts Center. What is that? The Kennedy Center.
Kennedy Center. Yeah, you got it.
Because at the time, my family was living in Manassas. We done lived in Ashburn, Manassas, all around Northern Virginia. And so I said, I want to be just like him. And it was the concert master. And in Peter in the Wolf, if any of you ever have a chance to go, what's amazing about it is that they get up for the students and all the different instruments have a solo. And when I heard the violin the first time, I was sold. I was like, this is my voice. This is how I want to present to the world. And I knew instantaneously. And once the teacher, I said, hey, I want to know how to play that. He said, you can be anything that you want to be. You can do anything that you put your mind to. Wasn't that such a wonderful seed to plant in a young person? And then, of course, there was financial matters. So it was like having to rent an instrument and, you know, my family thinking that I should be playing the trombone or saxophone or something else. And they just thought that it was going to be a phase. And my mother said that one day she woke up and heard me playing something, but her and my father thought that, my stepfather at that point, they thought that it was a recording. And so she said, child, what is that recording you're playing? Or is that you? I said, no, that's me, Mom. She goes, oh, wow. Went back to her room. I didn't think anything of it. I'm squeaking and squawking and, you know, trying to get it together. And from that point on, I knew that music was what I wanted to do. And then I had to have that conversation with my stepfather, who thought because I was running and doing very athletic and doing things that I was going to be an athlete. My mother, she was an athlete and a dancer. My aunt was a dancer. We think that we're related to Peg Leg Bates. And my aunt danced with Sammy Davis Jr. and she broke both of her knees falling down some steps when she was about to audition for Juilliard in New York City. So all of those things, you know, I had to kind of tell my family, this is what I want to do. And maybe I'm not meant to do what you guys want me to do. And so that was another conversation. And the second part of your question, what was the second question you asked?
The second part was when we hear the well-known narrative about trans women, we don't hear them about being a classical artist.
Right.
How are you changing the narrative?
Well, I one of the things I couldn't figure out, and I just actually recently made a post of this on Facebook, is why did it matter, you know, that I was trans or Black or any of those things when it came down to performing whatever music that you loved. And also, I come from Black classical musicians all throughout. I was doing programs at Norfolk State University, Hampton University, Old Dominion University, and all my mentors, as you guys can see if you look, is very diverse. I mean, people from China and everything else. But my core mentors are Black classical musicians. So in my mind, I never had it in my mind that a Black person could not do those things. And even my grandmother, who used to sing Negro spirituals and stuff around the house and stuff like that. And I used to sing in the gospel choir and in college, as well as growing up, singing was always around. The violin was just something that was kind of strange to my family. They weren't too familiar, like in my immediate family. But I was always first chair. I was always winning, doing competitions and stuff. And so they said, hey, if this is something that you want to do, my mother said, I'm not going to tell you to practice. I'm not going to force you to do anything. And the reason why this picture on here is so important.
And can you tell everybody the name of your book?
Yes,
Right.
it's called Tenacity, the Tona Brown story. But this photo is so important because it takes a community to make an artist. Now, the violin was bought by my grandfather. Okay. The bow was given to me by an ex. The gown actually is someone who supported me at Carnegie Hall. His name is Robert E. Knight, and he has been an incredible designer friend of mine who donates gowns to me. He would just donate or let me rent them because he knew I didn't have a lot of money. So everything about this picture is exactly what I preach to everyone, and why I'm so passionate about education, why I'm so protective of my students, I'm in all of that. So it's like, it's everything in one when you see that part. For me to stand in that pose and to be confident in myself as a Black transgender woman who's a classical musician, and to make that picture took a lot of work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, congratulations on the work. Girl, that dress is fabulous. Okay. I'm not even going to try to be sophisticated and say it. I loved it. It was really great. So we're just going to take a little break again. We're here at Govans Presbyterian Church. Most of you are with us. You know each other. Dorian, who has joined us, is a member of First Unitarian Church in downtown Baltimore. And we have with us our pastor, whom I adore, and I just think he's wonderful because he is. Okay, say hello, Tom.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Tona. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your story with us. I really appreciate it.
Of course, anytime.
We all do. Yeah.
Do you have any questions for me?
Well, I came in a little late, so I don't want to repeat something.
Oh, no, just started. Go
I-
ahead.
So I want some help with my sermon coming up this Sunday. And it's the story of Jacob's name changing to Israel. And Jacob wrestles with God and gets his name changed from Jacob to Israel. And I wondered, have you changed your name? And did you change your name in your transition? And what is the significance of a name change for you?
Ah, what a
Good
wonderful question.
Great.
Wonderful question. A name changes everything. Because again, you have to remember, I was the fourth. So my name was Thomas Brown the fourth. And there's a funny part of my book where I went to go to the office to get my name changed. And there was a wonderful older lady that was there. Oh my goodness, she just had this wonderful energy, and I was so nervous. And a lot of times, a lot of us have anxiety in bureaucratic, office spaces and different things, because you just don't know how people are going to react to you, what they're going to say, all of that. And so I walk in there, and this lady says, she goes, "Oh my gosh, I see why you want to change this name. It doesn't fit you at all." And she thought that my name was Thomasina. So she kept saying, "Thomasina, I don't like that. I like Tona better." And I'm like, and so I'm like, me too. It was so funny. But when you do change your name, what's so powerful about it is that you're telling the world how you want to be spoken to. And there's another story that I had that that's in the book with my grandmother. I have one grandmother who is in the Kojic church, and she's a minister. And we've always been kind of at odds when it came to who I am and that kind of thing. And I had to tell her, even, like, if you can't just say my name, then just don't refer to me at all. Like, you can just say a pronoun or you can say my name. But what we're not going to do is dead name me. That's what we're not going to do. If I can respect you and she's everything but perfect, Trust me on that. I'm just gonna leave it at that. But if I can respect you and all of the decisions that you have made in your life, only thing I'm asking you to do is to just respect my identity. And she said, well, what if I don't remember your name? Really? You know, so you will have some people in your family that can be that way. They will try to be very, very vigilant about, well, this was the name that was on your birth certificate and all that kind of stuff, which is very violent. And it is what it is. But I just choose, and this is the advice that I give other trans people, I choose not to be around those type of people. You know, they don't have no problems trying to call me and ask me for money, but you can't say, Tona, we're not doing that. Do you see what I'm saying? So for my own mental health, and so that I could continue to do the work that I do, that you guys know me from doing, I choose not to be around those type of family members. And they, you know, she's hints has come around and said, oh, you know, I love all my grandchildren and all of that kind of stuff. And I respect her for being who she is. And she respects me, and I keep it over there, and I see her when I see her. But it's, for me, that's been very, very helpful. It's not helpful for a transgender person to keep being around people that are just not going to be open to who you are, and they're calling you by your birth name or misgendering you and all that kind of stuff. That's just not helpful.
Thank you. Appreciate
You're
that.
welcome.
Tona. We have a comment from Renee out in the Midwest, right? Renee says, I have not met many people who changed their names. I think this is very important. I changed mine at 19. I respect your courage in doing that. I had
Oh,
my birth certificate amended. So, Renee, one day we have to have coffee and you tell me what your other name was. Okay. But Tona, that's such a good point. How can you work with, can you tell the difference when we in the ally community want to be supportive,
right.
but sometimes we have trouble misgendering, you know?
Well, and I do too. Let me
Okay.
first say that we all have. Let me tell you that it can be a challenge. It can be a challenge. That's why it's good
No.
to just ask people, what pronouns do you know do you use, and or just like I told my grandmother at that time, I was only like 19 or 20 or something. You know, just use their name in place of it, because even myself as an activist going around doing the work, I can see the inner beauty in people and all those type of things that I don't just pay attention to the surface, but there are some people that it can be a little tricky. Just ask them what their preferred pronouns are, and that'll work. If you make a mistake, just apologize. You know what I'm saying? I'm sorry. I do it all the time, and I'm a transgender person.
Thank
Okay.
you.
You know what I mean? I feel that sometimes, we're too harsh on allies who are trying to understand and to do. And I'm constantly trying to mention that to people. Like, everyone is not going to understand you. Not everybody is going to accept you or like you either. But when it comes down to working environment, we just want to be respectful. You're going to respect me. I'm going to respect you. We're here for business or whatever it is. Then I'm gonna like, when you tell me that your name is Lea, that's all I know you by, right? And so most people, when they met me, that's another reason why most trans people kind of need to get away from their hometowns and build, because none of you all knew Thomas Brown the Fourth. That's not who you knew. You only knew Tona Brown. Do you see what I'm saying? So it wasn't hard for you to get used to me, to respect my identity and all of that. But when you're going back home and you have someone who is just being gun-ho that I'm just gonna do XYZ, just because it's very problematic, and it causes a lot of transgender people a lot of severe anxiety and mental illness. Being transgender is a condition, it's not a disorder.
Right.
So remember that the violence that comes towards us, whether it's just from words or actual physical violence, all of those type of things that come to us start the process of getting someone to have some mental illness issues, anxiety issues. Some people are diagnosed with all kinds of things. Okay. So you always want to be mindful of that. And even just seeing transgender people out in public, that person is probably in a state, as I've learned doing activism, I don't have this issue, but they're in a state of anxiety already because so many people target us and say horrible things in public and
Is
all
that
that kind of.
trauma?
Oh yeah, very, very trauma. It's almost it can be pretty severe. I've been out with some trans people that break out in sweats and start shaking and stuff just from walking up and down the street.
Mhm.
So you being an ally and just being nice, you
I
know,
can do that. I'll try.
and yeah, and just compliment, girl, I like them shoes, you know, or
But I
whatever
really
it is.
do. Okay.
No, and you do. You have always been an amazing ally and
Oh,
and
God
a
bless you.
beautifully spirited person. And you don't have to be perfect in order for me to say that, okay? Or for any of you. You don't have to be perfect. We're gonna make mistakes. There's also language barriers. Shoot, I don't know all the terms that come out all the time. That's one of the reasons why I was so blessed to have a beautiful cis woman who has always been a great friend of me. She makes sure I stay working. She's always getting her college to have me come back, work with the students and all that. She said, Tona, because I believe in the work you do with them. And we can see all the professors, because I teach professors how to teach. We can see instantaneously from a masterclass a change within 5-10 minutes of you working with them. That's because I made myself a vocal connoisseur. I made myself, you know, teachers when I was growing up used to notice that other students would come to me and ask for advice. And then they would ask me to come in. There was a man by the name of Dr. John McCormick that I pay a lot of homage to when I was growing up. And he and his wife would take me to the Virginia Symphony. They would pick me up from the projects where my aunt was living. And because I chose, this is interesting too in my story, I chose not to live with my family so that I could stay in the arts high school, because y'all remember, my family was moving every year. And so I said, enough is enough. When I got to high school and I got a little brave, you know, I said, I want to stay with my grandfather. So I stayed with my grandfather for 2 years, and I stayed with my aunt in the projects of Norfolk for 2 years, carrying around a little violin, practicing Vivaldi, Paganini, and everything else. And people used to stand outside of my window and listen to the music. So you can change lives just for being who you are, just for loving what you love. And they would come to my concerts. Now, mind you, my family never came to my concerts. My mother, she did, a couple of aunts, but most of my family, because it was the classical stuff, they didn't really support in that way. But I'm okay with that because I'm not used to, you see what I'm saying? You know, if you get used to something, whether it's bad for you or not, if you get used to it, I never knew anything different. And I wasn't alone. A lot of the Black students that went to these higher level conservatories and everything, you might have had 1 or 2 family members that would kind of support what you're doing, and the family would support you financially and buy you, you know, your little shoulder rest and, you know, stuff like that. But they weren't going to come to every concert and, you know, sit through it. When you see Black musicians, that is someone that has a passion beyond belief. That's a classical musician. Like, you know what I mean? And usually they're going to be at the top of the school because of that passion. And so we all sat in the first chairs and we would all help each other and practice and get together. You know, that's the thing about music. Music is the grand unifier. It really is. Like, no one cares about none of that other stuff that the world cares about. We're there. Here's your notes. Here's your notes. This is what we're here to do. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so glad for myself that I chose music. Because I don't know if I would be here today. I have no idea. If it was not for the grace of God and just finding something that I could just say, enough is enough. Let me focus on this. I'll get to the real world later, but I have to get this little passage. You know what I mean? That's what helped me survive all this transition stuff. That's what helped me. And that's why I'm such a passionate teacher. And I'm so, I get so much joy when I see a student break through. You know, other people, when they watch me teach, they go, oh my God, you really love what you do. I love it with every soul, every little piece of my body. I love it because I know what it's like to want something. I know what it's like when you can't afford an instrument. I know what it's like when my grandfather almost killed us on the way to an audition because he was 89 years old at that point and he stopped on an off ramp and then backed up on an off ramp. Cars are swerving back and forth. We're screaming. I'm screaming at the top of the lungs. I went in there for my regional audition. I placed 20 points above the second chair and everyone else because I wasn't nervous. I almost died on the thing. And then this same grandfather that bought me my instrument, remember, it's an old country man. This same man, when I played the Brook Violin Concerto, third movement for the concerto competition and won, he wouldn't give me a ride to the orchestra concert. So I had to run to there. I was late. The conductor was like, what is going on? You know what I'm saying? Because I'm always early. So I'm running late and I go up there and I had to perform that concerto by riding on the bus and running into the hall at the last minute. And then next thing you know, having to put on a performance. So when you see us and you see us excel in classical music, there's a lot that we go through just to present this music to the world. There's a lot. And it can be even from your own family.
So true. So true. It's definitely a journey that is not like other people's journey.
Yes, and I will say there are other trans people that do perform classical music as well. Like when I did the presentation for the National Association of Teachers of Singing, I contacted Brianna Sinclair, who's a gorgeous spinto soprano. Really? And she came on. And actually, when I first transitioned, there was a coloratura soprano that was transgender that we used to sing and do things together. But unfortunately, you know, just the world and her depression and stuff like that, she just didn't make it. I mean, she's not passed away.
Being a coloratura is also very demanding.
Yeah,
she was dealing with those other demons.
Absolutely. And she just was singing. I mean, she was sing, you know, of course, people think that a person who's born male can't sing as high, but she used to sing B's above high C. She had a very weird, freaky, super, super high voice. And it was gorgeous. Kind of reminds you of Kathleen Battle. Right. And so
I have big everything and I am a tenor, I think. So let me tell you, really. I used to be a mezzo. I was a mezzo.
Right.
But now I'm a tenor. I've transitioned to become.
Wow. I mean, I work with so many different types of voices that, you know, I love rare and unique sounds like yours. I love that instead of the cookie cutter voices. I love that. So I'm always trying to run and I go around the world. I'm listening. I listen to master classes by different people on YouTube. I'm always trying to listen to something that sounds different, analyze it, see how they're making their sounds.
Well, Tona, we are so appreciative that you've taken this hour with us. You know, and girl, you were worried about talking for a whole hour. And look at you. Look at you. You did it.
You guys are so beautiful.
So thrilled. I have to tell you that this space, Govans Presbyterian Church, is a special church because we are at a welcoming and affirming place. I mean, we just don't accept people. We love them as they are and
Aw.
who they are. You don't even have to believe in God. We've got some atheists that come to church, but they just want to socialize. Tom, you can tell a little bit more.
You are hitting it on the head.
Yes, I'm a fan. Okay.
But yeah,
I would love to come and perform. I would love to come and perform
oh,
at
that
your
would be
church.
amazing. That would be
Oh my
amazing.
God, yes. We'll
Yeah.
talk.
Now when we say LGBTQ affirming, we don't just mean like some people do, well, everybody sins and we don't judge. We mean that being who you are is not a sin. That being gay, being lesbian, bisexual, transgender, queer, whatever, however God made you, God wants you to be that, and that's not a sin. And so that's what we mean by affirming.
Well, I would love to me and Leah will set it up, and I would
Yes,
love to come and perform at the church for some sort of event or something like
we
that. You
would
guys
love
just
that.
let me know. I would love to.
Well, I feel so
just want
blessed
to,
to know
I just
someone
want
as
to add
Susan.
something here, Leah, to what
This is
Tom said.
Susan.
It's not that we don't consider it a sin, we consider it a joy.
Yes.
Exactly.
I
Amen.
know that's right.
Amen.
So something to
Yeah,
celebrate.
I tell you, I have always had wonderful. I used to work with the Episcopal Church before I was fired after being outed at that church at that time, back in the day.
Oh,
And I just chose to kind of step down before it became like a big drama because I was working with homeless and different youth at the church, and the Episcopal Church was so open, but they actually had this minister that came that was trying to change everything. And so, of course, they booted him out, since then. But I've had wonderful experiences with Presbyterian churches and Episcopal churches and things like that. So I would love to. And I love sacred music. So just anytime I would love to come up and perform.
this is a wonderful space. It really is. Because, I grew up in the church. I'm from the South as well. But I rejected the church because I felt it was conservative, too conservative. Honey, not Govans.
Oh,
And we
yeah.
can say, praise the Lord. And
Yeah.
we can do
Amen.
everything. It's beautiful. Maria, do you have anything to say, my dear? Maria.
Sorry, I was just trying to get off of mute. I'm bad about that. Just Tona, this has been really fabulous having you here. We love hearing about the experiences that you have gone through and what you've done with it. And I hope we can bring you. We'd love to hear you perform.
Yes.
Yeah, I would
She's
love.
another wonderful organizer, so we'll talk.
Yes. That's why I sent the hint to Leah. She knows. We will definitely do that. And I want a pianist and the
Oh
whole
my
thing.
God,
So
girl.
that we can really
She's a
jam
brilliant
and
pianist.
at Bar Madish and some different stuff will just be beautiful at the church. So just let me know. I would love to do it.
It actually would be really wonderful. Well, we'll talk. Well, thank you, Frank and Renee and Susan. It's so wonderful to see you. And Dorian, thank you so much for being here, my dear. I hope everything's going well at First Unitarian. Just say hello. We can't hear you, unfortunately, Dorian. So I'm going to move on. But it's so wonderful to
I'm
see you.
sorry. Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes, there you are.
Oh, actually, I didn't have my thing now. Yeah, everything's going great at First U, and
Wonderful.
but I could not miss this.
I'm so glad you
I
decided to
I
come.
had to see Tona. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's
Tony,
a
we
pleasure
remember
to
you from
meet
back in the
you.
day, girl.
I
Um,
know. I used to
okay.
I had a wonderful time in Baltimore. Like I said, I would love to come back and do some things and
We're
bring
not
a
too
string
far.
on,
We're not too far.
bring a string ensemble as well. I have some friends. All of us play with the local orchestras and bring a string ensemble and just do something wonderful
Well,
for such
we
a
need to do a
beautiful.
little bit of fundraising first.
Right. Okay.
We'll get you there. We
No.
promise. But we got
Okay.
to get you there, honestly.
I would love to. Just let me know and I'll be there.
Okay. And Kay, it's nice to see you. And Stephen, oh, Stephen, and Sylvia, I know she's here. Wonderful to see you, sweetie. Wonderful to see your name. Okay. Sylvia found my keys today. Thank you, Sylvia. Yes. Tona, thank you. Everybody, we are so grateful to Tona for really educating us and also just inspiring us to do those things that make us happy. You know, it's tough being a musician out here. And it is an inspiration when somebody does what they do and they love it all at the same time. And I don't care who it is, but because it's Tona, it's even more fantastic. Thank you so much, my dear, for being here.
You're so
And
welcome. Thank you so much for everyone who attended and for everything. And you see, thinking about me and inviting me. Like I said, people are surprised. I do things like this all the time. Sometimes I have to juggle a couple of things. Like today, unfortunately, sorry for being late trying to do that. But sometimes I have to kind of juggle things around. But anything that I can do, I do. I mean, I came from an aunt where I volunteered in, soup kitchens and doing all that kind of stuff. So I definitely love being a part of things like this.
well, thank you. You're definitely amongst friends here.